Hi, this is Dr. Jose Saldivar with another episode, the Way to College podcast. And in my podcasting life, my brief podcasting life, I've encountered a number of wonderful people, amazing people, people doing amazing things. As I've often shared, a lot of my contacts and my guests are folks in my network. But then I always ask people that I interview, to recommend others who would be willing to share their story. And today I have one of those individuals. So, Dr. Posada, would you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Dr. Saldiva, for the opportunity. It's an honor to be here with you today to share my journey. I'm Eric Posada. I am currently sitting here in my office at Angelo State University. I'm the Director of Choral Activities here. This will be my second year. However, I've worked in higher education for, I don't know, I think I'll be going on my 9th year.
Wow.
I'm also the founder and artistic director of Pasion, professional chorus based out of the Rio Grande Valley. I am also director of music at Sierra Vista United Methodist Church here in San Angelo, and I have just founded a new community chorus, the San Angelo Chorus, that will begin in August here as well.
Dr. Posada, you sound busy.
Too busy.
Well, thank you for joining me today. Dr. Posada, I want to start. I ask all of my guests this question. If you had to go back and identify a starting point for your educational journey, where would that be for you?
Well, I'm so thankful that earlier this morning when I was doing my research, I heard this exact question and I thought, oh my gosh, what a difficult question. And so I was fortunate to formulate some thoughts. I think we begin learning the moment we're born. So I think our education begins then, and that's true today with my 6-year-old son. I think every moment, every day is an opportunity to teach and educate, and I'm proud of having that opportunity to do so with him. If I'm thinking back to my formal education, for sure, college, going away from McAllen to Texas Tech, never being away from home was a major experience and development for me. But a more specialized education, I would say my field with music and choir, then I'd have to look back to middle school, and I began there at 6th grade. But there are wrinkles of educations before then. At 5th grade, I was cut from my elementary choir. I wasn't good enough. And
Wow.
and then I look back to maybe 2 years before that when I saw La Bamba and Richie Valens, and I thought, man, that's what I want to do with the rest of my life. So it's hard to say a definite moment, but I would say leading up to those middle school years, I started to figure out what I enjoyed doing, and it was music and choir, but also athletics at the same time.
So let me ask you, the wonderful stories, by the way. I remember seeing La Bamba and I had no interest in singing, but I thought it was a great movie and such a great story that I think, I had no knowledge of prior, right? Who Richie Valens was. But let me ask you, you identify early on this passion for music. Um, and was it, as a kids, we're always asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? Did you see yourself doing something in music? Was that something that early on, like you said, 5th grade, you were cut from your choir? But did you still did that deter you? And was music something that you really wanted to pursue long term?
Um, I didn't really know, I guess. I should have mentioned this a while ago, speaking about my education and that moment. It wasn't until my junior year of high school that I realized what I wanted to do, which was be a choir director. And along the lines of what I was saying about education and where it begins the moment you're born, I also want to add that the goal is to be a lifelong learner and continue
Mhm.
learning. And I feel like I'm doing that. And some of our interests even change as we go along and continue on our path. But um, I didn't quite know. I knew what I knew was that I started playing t-ball at 5th grade, 5 years old. My son's 6. I played all sports: football, baseball, track. I knew that my dad loved to sing the oldies, and whenever I'm sharing this story, I use that relatively because I don't want to offend anyone. But for me, as a you know, pre-teen, I was hearing my dad sing these oldies, and he sang with such passion. He was more of an artist, I could say. I can't draw and paint, but
Yeah.
and he would sing, but I jokingly say this about him. Hopefully, when our paths meet again in heaven, he doesn't hold it against me. But I say he had two notes, and you know, but he loved singing, and I love those, you know, the Beatles and Elvis and, you know, Queen and CCR. Like I loved what he loved, and that was
Yeah.
to sing. And so then when I saw La Bamba, I thought, man, okay, that's my voice, and I wanna do this. And I'm sure I was offended or hurt when I was cut, but then at the same time, it wasn't until I heard my voice had changed early. I was, you know, maybe fourth grade. It was lower than it is now. And then it wasn't until I heard a boy behind me singing, I thought, oh, okay, that's what they want me to do with my voice. And okay, then I started progressing on. So I didn't know that until my junior year. And I say that because at that year, we, you know, socially you want to be accepted, and playing sports, McAllen Memorial at that time, we had been horrible, and we won the district championship. And so it's all sports and athletics, and I want to go to this school. And but then there was a day in choir. My director was Jack Bowers, and he was a legend at that time. And he wound up retiring at the end of that year. But there was a moment when I'm standing there in rehearsal, and then I had this transcendent experience where I describe it as everything slowing down, and like almost an out of body, where I'm seeing this happen. And
Mm-hmm.
I came to the realization of, that's it. That's what I want to do. And so I didn't know before then. And even after that, after my first year of college, and my dad, I remember him dropping me off at the airport to fly back to Lubbock. I was kind of still unsure, because the way I was raised, it was a tough, you know, the old school way. And my dad was intense, and my coaches, and I didn't know if he was kind of embarrassed that I was going into music. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget, he just said, what else? Why would I be disappointed? What else would I want you to do?
Yeah.
And that kind of freed me up to, okay, really become who I wanted to be.
Because I think what you just shared, right? A lot of students, especially I think, you know, if you're Latino and you grew up in a Latino household, right? You worry about, what are my parents' expectations? Are my parents going to be okay with me pursuing this path? How did that conversation happen? I mean, he's dropping you off at the airport. Did you ask him if he was okay with it? Was it just something that he brought up? How did that happen?
I brought it up. We were sitting there in Harlingen, I'll remember, and one of the terminals, I'm sure it's changed, but there was led right across the little pathway to a restaurant or something that was there. We were sitting there, and I don't know. Now that I'm older, I consider myself an empath, and I can feel, and just, it was something that we never discussed. You know, there's a lot of those conversations in the Latino community, and your parents, and you don't talk about certain things. And
Yeah.
I just felt like I needed to ask him. It was, again, I try to raise my son a little differently, but it was something we didn't talk about. I kind of lost my train of thought. It was just something I knew I needed to ask. Approval wasn't readily given.
Mm.
You know, that affirmation wasn't one of those things
Yeah.
that you were raised in. It was more like, you know, making fun of, hey, you know, hey, vato, you know. And so it was, I guess I needed that from him to
Yeah.
feel like I was on the right path, and I could continue moving forward with his blessing.
What, you know, because I'll often ask my guests for advice. And so I imagine, you know, a lot of young people, like you said, that affirmation, they don't necessarily get that affirmation, right? But what do you say to young people who are trying to find their way and are unsure of this path, but they're passionate about it, they care about it, but they don't know how to engage their parents in that conversation? What advice might you give them?
Wow. I'll approach it both two ways.
Mhm.
I think I was asked this question recently. We had a performance, and someone was working with youth and troubled youth in the prisons and maybe the church. And they asked me about my dream. What would I say about pursuing your dream? And I think it applies here. It's first, don't be afraid to pursue your dream. And it's scary. And even if you fail, you can say you've done it, you tried it,
Mhm.
went for it. You'll never have that regret. And
Yeah.
even to the last second, sometimes I'm wondering if it's going to happen, if I'm going to need to cancel something. But I believe no matter what, because I believe, and I'm invested so much in it, that the universe is going to take care of it. And
Mhm.
so in this sense, having that conversation, I've encountered many students, particularly in my field, where they want passion as their music, but their parents tell them, you're not going to make enough money. You got to do this, or go get this degree. And then if you wanted to do music, then you can. And I even had a family member, she won't readily admit to this, but right before I left, they tried to take me out and convince me to do something else. So I think there's no way there's no easy way to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Um, and oftentimes the things we're afraid of, you actually broach the subject, you sit down and you pour your heart into it, and you realize, like in my situation there, I didn't know how my dad would react. I was so scared that he surprised me with his support. And
Mhm.
you know, it might not be the response it's not going to be as bad as you think, hopefully. And
Yeah.
you might find that on the other end, they're oblivious to how you're feeling. It's like marriage. I'm learning as I go, and you might not know. You might think, oh gosh, they're going to feel this way, they're going to judge me, they're going to tell me this and that, and they have no idea that what you want is to hear their approval, and like, oh my gosh, of course, I'm so sorry that I didn't say this, or be
Yeah.
supportive. So I think it's worthwhile having it, trying that conversation, pour your heart into it, um, because you never know how the other person is feeling or going to respond, or what's going through their mind.
I love that, because I think, yeah, you're right. A lot of times we hold in and we're afraid to broach that subject, right? For fear of rejection, or just, and we make a lot of assumptions around that. So I really appreciate you saying that. You I want to go back a little bit. You said you attended Texas Tech. Was college was college always part of the plan for you growing up? Did you know you were going to go to college? Did your parents sort of encourage that in you, or was there ever any doubt that you would go on to college?
Gosh, I don't. It's difficult because there's a lot I learned kind of as I went. So I can't recall the conversation being had, or
Mhm.
I don't know. I guess it was somewhere in the back of our minds, and then I think maybe at some point my dad may have mentioned it, but it wasn't something as our Latino community, and particularly first generation students. I don't really feel it was either pushed nor discouraged. I think it was
Mm.
just a given. But how to get there wasn't something that I even knew what to do, as far as applying for financial aid, or how much I'd get into debt, or what do you need to do, dorm. Like I didn't have that kind of knowledge and support. And I wouldn't say it wasn't lack of support, but it was a being oblivious of it.
Yeah.
We had gone. I'm the first one. What do you do? Who do you need to talk to? So I think it was just kind of a given. It was another one of those unspoken things, right? Like it just happened.
Yeah.
I'm grateful. And I guess I could advocate for the educators, right? My choir director, I told them what I wanted to do, and they pointed me in that right direction and helped me, and all of that. But had it not been for that, I don't think I would have really known where to begin with that.
The I love that you said you told your choir director and they were able to point you in the right direction. I think, again, right, speaking up and in letting others know, especially those that maybe your teachers, your a mentor or something, what it is that you'd like to accomplish, so that then they can maybe provide some guidance. I think that's so critical. A lot of times we don't necessarily tell kids that. Um, Again, I'm going to ask you for some advice, because I think that's important. Is, like you said, for first gen students, it's all new. It's a new experience being in higher ed, being in college. Yet you had the courage to go and ask your choir director, right? And what you wanted to do. And so they were able to guide you. What do you get? What do you tell somebody, a young person who's maybe fearful of that, or just doesn't know, like, who do I ask? Who do I talk to? What advice might you give them?
I would tell them to kind of not surround themselves, but gravitate towards a mentor that they can trust, right? And I think that's what I try to do in any situation that I'm in, or here at Angelo State. It's creating that environment where they feel like they can come talk to me and tell me. It starts with me. I'm gonna make time. Let's come in, talk, tell me, and share. Let's learn about each other, and tell me how I can help you achieve your dreams. And let me guide you there. You're you're away from home. You don't have your family. I know what that's like. I know people have guided me throughout, even now at my age, right? That are there, that can help me navigate those things. So find someone that you can trust. There's always that teacher that maybe will lend an ear that you can talk to. It's a coach. Maybe it doesn't even have to be at school. Maybe it's someone at church, or it could be someone at your job, or maybe your friend's parents. But I think in our hearts, we know that there's probably someone we feel comfortable talking to. And I think it begins there. Start asking those questions. I was always an introvert. Maybe that helps as well. Aside from when I'm rehearsing, or if it's coaching, or it's man, it's like electric. Put me in a room with 20 people that I don't know, and man, I'm in the corner by myself, just like, okay, how much longer do I have to be here? Is it polite for me to leave? Type of thing. So take that step forward, and the sooner you can do that and ask for help, or even now, if I'm going to ask for Pasion and nonprofit for money, the sooner I can just get over myself and just go put myself out there, you start to see that certain doors will start opening up for you. That land of opportunity will open itself up for you.
I love that. And I love that you hit on a couple of things, right? You talked about, right, if we don't ask for help, one, we don't realize maybe the opportunities that we're kind of not allowing ourselves to take part in. But also you said something that I think was really important, and hopefully for, the adults listening, the role that you played, right? That for your own students, recognizing might be their first time away from home. It's a new environment. Maybe they're lost, they're scared. So reaching out to them and getting to know them, I think is so powerful. And sometimes we forget, right, about maybe even our own journey, and how critical having somebody like that was important to our success. So I appreciate that you do that for your students. That's awesome. You go to Texas Tech. You have that conversation with your dad.
Yeah.
You're good with music. He's good with music. What's next? What was next for you at that point?
Well, my journey took an unexpected turn. I was 19, and so I finished my first year of college. My dad went to pick me up. It should be noted that he didn't go drop me off, and many years later I find out why, because I'm looking at my 6-year-old son like, dude, I'm not ready for you to go to college. Like, I can't deal with that. And so my dad did not go, because I'm sure it was difficult. But he goes to pick me up, and then July 4th, I remember I took him to the hospital. He was not feeling well. And by November, he's gone. So it took an unexpected turn. I took the rest of that year off, and then I went back. And for me, it was a no-brainer. Other people might say, hey, you could have gone in this path, or you could have gone this, and my life could have been different. But I continued, finished up there, and I wanted to one of my regrets, and I know my dad did it on purpose, was I didn't know he was sick, as sick as he was. I didn't know he was going to die, or else I would have stayed home.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't. I'm sure he knew, but didn't want me to do that. So years later, I was, my home became his parents, my grandparents, and my godmother, and I was going to student teach, and I requested. So then I started kind of like this. I spoke up, and here's what I want to do, and here's why it's important. And it was important for me to student teach, not in Lubbock or any DFW area, but I want to go back home. And I wanted to learn from that, or at least have the opportunity to change at least that year of destiny, which is I want to be close to my grandparents. I don't know how much longer they're going to be here. My godmother, can I go home and student teach? And I did. So I student taught in McAllen, and then I got my first middle school job and high school job in Brownsville. And so that was the next step before I went off for my master's degree and such.
You said earlier in the interview that you knew you wanted to be a choir director when you were a junior in high school, right? So while you're doing your student teaching, and then getting your first teaching job, is that still at the forefront of your mind, right? You've got all of this, you've been able to come back, there's this really love for wanting to be close to home, close to your grandparents, right? Like you said, you don't know how long you're going to have them. But at the same time, is that goal of becoming the choir director, was that still there?
Well, I was already a choir director.
Okay.
So I student taught in choir. McAllen High School, and then my first job was middle school choir in Brownsville, and then high school choir in Brownsville. So I was already living that life. Then I obtained my first church music job, and then the next step. So in that time, my grandfather and my grandma passed away, and then it was time for me to move forward. I still, grateful for the time I spent with my godmother that lived another, 10 years or so, but
yeah.
But then it was time for me to get back on my journey. And it was, when I was at Tech, my choir director there, he also retired. But while he was there, I said, okay, I'm going to get my master's here. I'm going to get my doctorate with him. I want to, do this. And then he retired. And then I'm like, oh, gosh, what am I going to do now? So I was waiting, and then I attended a music conference that's held every year, Texas Music Educators Association, in February. And all music educators across Texas and beyond come to this. It's probably their biggest convention at the I forgot, Henry B. something convention center there in Gonzales, maybe.
Yeah, Henry B. Gonzales.
Right, and then I watched this choir, Sam Houston State, and the choir director, they were awesome. And I saw that he studied with the same person that my director at Tech studied with. Therefore, I recognized that. So that became my next step. I'm going to go study with him and continue on my journey.
I love all the stories that I hear right on the podcast, but I especially love yours because I think, in all my years of teaching, a lot of my students, when I meet them, I want to know them. I want to know who they are. And I'll ask, a lot of them will say that they wanted to leave, but they didn't leave because of family. And so, I appreciate your story because your father didn't tell you, because he, wanted you to go away, right? Didn't want that weighing on you, probably. But then you still, right? You're still able to come home. You're still able to appreciate and spend time with your loved ones, never sacrificing your education, never sacrificing the goals that you set for yourself when you were younger. And so still being able to see those through, hopefully that inspires, one of our listeners, right? That it is possible to still cultivate that closeness and that family relationship and still pursue, your educational dreams and professional dreams. So
Right.
Thank you for that. I think that's awesome. You said, you wanted to get your master's and your doctorate with your choir director there at Texas Tech, but they retired. So here you find yourself with this other opportunity to study there with, but before that, did you always know you were going to get the master's? Was that something also that you wanted to do? Or is that something that, because I mean, some people might say, well, I became a choir director and I'm doing high school choir and I'm good.
Right.
Yeah. Why did you want to pursue further?
There's this fire inside. It goes back to, I think, the way I was raised, which was, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a positive thing. I think it's both, but you don't know if you're good enough. You don't know that. I don't know another way to put it. You're seeking that validation. You hear that voice and you just want to keep going. And I take pride in being from McAllen and coming back and giving back to my community and showing, like you mentioned, going away and then being able to come back and share with everyone in the community. But I go back, I'm still not done. I'm still want to keep moving forward. I still want to get better and work on myself. And I think that applies to all areas of life. And it's not to pass judgment on anyone. I have plenty of friends that this is what they want to do and they stay and they're comfortable and they, and they do a great job at that. But for me, probably not hearing that affirmation enough caused me to keep wanting more and to keep, going on and not letting those obstacles in our lives hold us back.
And it certainly sounds like it's also consistent with what you said early on, right? You did this idea that we're lifelong learners.
Yeah.
You're right. And so that you continue to grow and continue to learn. And yeah, I definitely agree. So
if I can say, Dr.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't touched on this, but I think it's important. I'm not a hero or martyr or anything like that, but leaving the Valley, leaving the RGV and working your way up outside of there. I had a professor that came from UT Pan Am, that was at Texas Tech, that the first day I showed up for my doctorate, it just was I think it was a theater class, and I wound up taking a marketing the arts for what I knew I wanted to become as of now. She said, "You're not supposed to be here." And I kind of laughed, right? But she was right. And that's the perspective people have of us Latinos coming from the Valley. And sometimes that's the perspective we have of ourselves. Mm-hmm. And it's important to gain those life experiences. I'll always say it's important to get away, go see the world. You want to come back, come back. But Latinos, being successful and continuing on moving forward outside of the Valley in a world where it's been difficult. I can tell you 1997, Lubbock, Texas was not what Lubbock is now. As far as the diversity and the cosmopolitan style of, place or town it is. But particularly now where there's so much hatred and vitriol, to be able to come out, get out of that comfort zone, go make something of yourself, show that, man, we have so much to offer, even from being from a border town, so much to offer the world, that no one should look down on us. And we should always fight for that equal opportunity as many others are fighting for, is important to be said and to share with anyone listening. Like I said, I'm not a hero or anything like that, but it was important to me to go out there, oftentimes being the only Hispanic in a certain environment.
Yeah.
And in some cases, scary environments, dangerous environments, but to be able to make your mark in this world as a Hispanic was important to me and continues to be.
What do you tell a parent who's afraid of letting their child go out into the world to explore? Because I think you just made a great case for, right, what are the benefits, right? Yeah, I think you made an outstanding case. So
right.
what do you tell a parent?
I'm gonna be that parent, right?
Yeah.
My son, dude, like, stay with me. But I know it's gonna be bittersweet, and I know that my goal for my son is, and my students, I tell them this as well, that, that because I try to treat them as I would him.
Yeah.
Be better than me. Be better than me. You can be a better man, be a better person, human being than me. Get out there. I would say you have to let them go try it out. I mean, as scary as it is, it's probably scarier for the parent, right?
Yeah.
'Cause we don't want anything to happen to our child. But let them go out and experience that, and figure their way out, and find who they're meant to be. And that might not be what we have in mind for them, but
Yeah.
ultimately we want them to be happy, we want them to have those life experiences, and um, I want them to be better than me. So please, the opportunities that I didn't seize, um, go find them, and make the most of them.
I love that. I love that. So take us to, after you've earned your doctorate, what was next for you? Did you know you wanted to be in higher ed? Or did you have other ideas about where you wanted to go next?
Well, I think when I had that first director at Tech, I said, that's what I want to do, teach college. I mean, here's how sheltered or I didn't know there was a doctorate in music. I didn't know there was a doctor besides a medical doctor, right? So
Yeah.
that was different. I didn't know that. So then going to work on my doctorate, and I'll always share this advice with my colleagues, like, should I get it? Should I not? What's your ultimate goal? If you want to teach college, then yes. If you just, want to I would say no, don't. Because my experience, I always appreciate when people are honest, that getting the doctorate, getting married, having children, it's not all the beautiful photos you get on Instagram.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not that. It's hard. And there's tears, and every day I wanted to give up, and those types of things that you encounter. So
Yeah.
having gone through it, and then obtaining, I didn't quite finish. I was ABD, or all but dissertation, and then I taught middle school for a year, and then I got my first higher education job at Texas A&M University. So I think once you're at that level and you're about to finish, and you finish, then it's okay. This is it. This is what my life's going to be moving forward. At least for me. There are some that have the doctorate that teach middle school and high school, and are happy, and I salute them. For me, it's okay. This is why I, got extra gray hair and lost all that weight and was broke, and because this was my ultimate goal and dream, and now I'm going to have the opportunity to do that. And it's also important for people to note that once you have that doctorate, there is no guarantee that you're going to get a job in higher ed, and or at the level that you want to. It's almost like starting over, becoming that graduate assistant, and working your way back up. So that process never ends.
I appreciate the reality, right? Because I think we don't get enough of that. And I would absolutely agree. Every once in a while I'll get students that are finishing up with their undergrad, and will come back and ask me about a master's or a doctorate, and I'll say, well, let me tell you, let's take an honest look at that experience, and let's talk about your ultimate goal. So I appreciate that.
I'll say this, if I may interject. My choir director in high school that inspired me to be a choir director, and he had received his master's at Tech. When I had asked about that, this is also a great piece of advice. He said, get your undergraduate, go out and teach, gain some experience. That way, when you go to your master's and your doctorate, you know the things that you want to focus on and get better and improve upon. Yeah. And that way you get the most, you maximize that education, that higher education, those extra degrees.
I love that. That's great advice. Um, so tell us about that, because you made a really great point in saying that you earn your doctorate, and even that's not a guarantee. And I always, whenever just before I left the university, I did a one final kind of presentation to parents, and I always tell them, look, at just because your sons and daughters earn a degree doesn't mean that job's going to be waiting for them, right? So what was that experience like for you? You finish up with your doctorate, and what was next for you?
It's extremely difficult. There's more people in my field coming out with a doctorate, a DMA, Doctorate of Musical Arts, than there are jobs. And every year you might get, I don't know, 5 to 10 that come open, right? And then you see in the job description that they're looking for someone. Not, I'll try to not run off on this tangent, but someone with experience. But then how do you get the experience if they won't offer you a job and an opportunity, right?
Yeah.
And then now with the economy and coming out of the pandemic, now that assistant professor job becomes, well, we want you to do this, 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 and it's a litany of items. So even back then, this was 2012, I can't tell you how many jobs I applied for, like 100. And
Wow.
nothing. And then I can update it as recently. So it was Texas Tech, and then Tyler Junior College, then 1 year at University of North Carolina, Charlotte, and now at Angelo State. So going through that process,
Mhm.
as well as my wife, who also has a Doctor of Musical Arts, and then one of my dearest friends that has a doctorate from Michigan, and my wife's from University of North Texas, and going through the process as recently as last year for me, and watching them even throughout this year, it's extremely difficult, and you have to apply to as many as possible. You have to learn to diversify what it is you're doing, acquire other skills. It's highly more complex than just, I'm done, give me a job at
Yeah.
my dream job. And I even remember my mentor, Alan Hightower, when I received my master's. He's probably remained one of my best friends to this day, and I give him all the credit in the world. He's now at University of North Texas. Told me, hey, when you finish your doctorate, you might want to take a high school job, because it's going to be better than some of the college jobs that they're going to be offered to you. And I didn't listen. I didn't listen, right? And but it is true. There's no guarantee. It opens the door for you. They might now look at your application as it's, the minimum requirement, the
Yeah.
doctorate. So you at least bypass that, but then it's way more competitive beyond that.
Again, thank you for your truth. I appreciate that.
Sure.
You're at Angelo State now, and when we started the interview, you listed everything, all of the activities that you do. Now, for our listeners out there that don't know where Angelo State is, where is Angelo State located, Dr. Posada?
That is a fair question, and that's particularly when I'm recruiting students. Where is it? Well, it's 6 hours, I'd say, northwest of the valley. If I was going to Lubbock, it'd be on the way to Lubbock. It's west of Dallas, probably about 4 hours. It's about west of Austin, northwest. Also San Antonio. San Antonio is actually closer. It's about 3.5 hours, which is great. So about 6 hours, 6.5 hours northwest, on its way to Lubbock. And then I would say, even today, I had a recruit come in today to speak to me. It's like Lubbock in the 1970s, I would say. It's a smaller town. It's dry. It's it's there, but it's for my field, a highly supportive artistic community.
That's good. It's good, right? And I think, as we all know, right, educationally, professionally, right, having that community that supports the work that we're doing is valuable, right?
Right. Yeah, and then I would even say geographically, if I had a compass and I drew a line straight across, I'm like, hey, if you're gonna wind up driving 5 hours, 6 hours, you can go to Houston, you can go to Sam Houston State, you can go Austin. I said, here we are, you don't have to go as far as Dallas, so
Yeah.
that kind of recruiting pitch. We don't have choir on Friday, so if you want to see your family, you could drive, you'd be there, leave in the morning, you'd be there by the afternoon, it's great. Um, but definitely supportive community, also a supportive administration here at Angelo State.
Mhm.
Our department chair, my colleagues, it's a smaller school, so everyone's kind of invested. You see the same students, you have more one-on-one attention. You can directly impact lives that way. You have access to these professors versus, unfortunately, in some other situations, you might be just another number.
Yeah.
So I think all of those things are important in this community.
I love that. Now that's good to know. As going back, I mentioned all of the things that you said you're doing now. One that jumped out and really, this is how I came to know of you, was with the work that you're doing with Pasion. So you're living in Angelo State or out there, right? But you're still doing work that's having an impact locally.
Right.
Why? Why is that important to you?
I know throughout the podcast we were speaking about going away and then coming back, and having gone through the educational system and having family and going out, learning and coming back and sharing and giving back and trying to help those in the community. It happened, I founded Pasion technically in 2016, but our first concert was 2017. I had finished my third year at A&M for all the wonderful experience I had. That last year we sang at Carnegie Hall. We'd
Oh,
gone to Germany, sang in Germany and Canada. But my son was born that year as well, and I felt I hadn't spent enough time with him as I wanted to, and that was important to me.
mhm.
So I kept my community choir job. That was a Brazos Valley Chorale, and then I kept my church job, St. Joseph Catholic Church. And I was able to have the flexibility to travel every other week to see my son, who still lives in McAllen. But I was inspired. I went to Texas Choral Directors Association, which happens every summer. That's similar to the other convention I mentioned, but this one's in the summertime and specialized for choir. And Pasion actually was invited to perform last summer at this convention in San Antonio at the Lila Cockrell Theater. So I reached out to my friends, those that I'd met throughout the course of my career, whether it was my first year of teaching or a church job or at Texas Tech working on my doctorate, my master's. And I said, hey, this is what I want to do. Is this possible? And they said, yeah. So then I started. I had no idea about articles of incorporation and the IRS and tax exempt and fundraising. And I just wanted to sing. I wanted to conduct my friends and make music.
Yeah.
And I wanted to bring that to the Valley because the Valley, particularly McAllen, everyone wants to become more like a Dallas or a Austin or Houston and have those offerings. And you see it just driving down the road and all the businesses and restaurants and the performing arts. And I mean, and it's incredible, but there's nothing like this in the Valley.
Mhm.
And I wanted to create something that was on par with those professional ensembles in those major cities. So I started with that. And then we went a step further. I wanted to give back to the community philanthropically. So the partnerships early on with Mujeres Unidas and Estela de Anda and Bebo's Angels, who works with parents with autistic children. And then even as recently as this year, with the connections I've made in the Valley, there was a memorial for the victims, the souls of Uvalde there in McAllen, and they called us. And I was already working on this project, the Mozart Requiem, which is a mass for the dead. And I had no idea that path would take me to, for me, an opportunity. I felt compelled to honor them in a way, not only musically, well, particularly
Mhm.
musically, but could I be a part of this memorial service where we're helping heal? I am literally thinking of these souls and using what I was blessed with, this gift of music. So can I give back? Can we participate in that? Can we find ways? So for me, it's the highest artistic product, but can I give back to my community, not only through my gift, what I learned, the knowledge, the experience, but also philanthropically? Can we reach out? Can we sing for art, for music therapy? Can we go and sing for the open house at Mujeres Unidas? Can we go and, where there's already a Santa Claus there and we're singing Christmas carols for these children? Like, can we do that for them?
Yeah.
And that was important for me to do as well.
You physically, right, your employment is in San Angelo State. But, it sounds like your heart, everything is here, is rooted in the Valley. And
right.
So congratulations, on all of your successes, on everything that you've done, but really congratulations on your ability to remain so grounded, I think, in community and in your home. Because I think for some of us, we have these lofty goals or aspirations, but it's easy for them to pull us away from our community and from where we're from. And so to hear you say, you're doing this work, you're living away, right, 6.5 hours, but you're still doing work that's so important to the community and filling clearly a necessity, right? And so just congratulations. That's just awesome.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Dr. Posada, I want to be mindful of our time. So before we leave, what advice, any final thoughts you want to share with our listeners, right? And thank you already, because you've already shared a lot of great advice for students, for parents. But if there was one other piece of advice that before we left you wanted to leave with our listeners, what would that advice be?
I think I'd reiterate to not be afraid of, it sounds cliche, but don't be afraid to follow your dreams. And I'll share, the other thing I'll say, I don't want to forget, so I'm just going to say, all anybody can say is no.
Yeah.
And you can move on, right? So the first concert we performed, that 2017, with Pasion, I had just watched the movie La La Land, and she puts on this concert. She followed her heart, created the script and everything, and put it on, and there was like 5 people there. And in her eyes, it was a failure. And the other gentleman, Ryan Gosling, was like, no, he was really pumping her up. And I thought, it's not a failure. And so I was worried, right? Here's Pasion, our first concert. We haven't even developed the awareness yet of a choir or the need.
Yeah.
If no one shows up. Well, but I still followed my dream and I made it happen. All these things had to occur for us to get to that moment. And
yeah,
for me, it was no matter what happens. And if you're spiritual or not, but where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, God is there. There's that spiritual presence, and there's something to be said for that. So don't be afraid. As I mentioned, there's been times when, even if it's financially a week away, my wife's telling me, no, you need, no, it's cancel it. Like, no, it's going to happen. I know it.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to follow your dream. If you fail, it's okay. You get back up, move on to the next thing. And then don't be afraid of no. It's the same thing of, I'm just going to throw it out there in the universe. I'm going to ask, and all they can tell me is no. Right? And I can move on and go on to somebody else and not take it personally and just continue on my journey. So, but the upside to that is, what if they say yes?
Yeah.
Then, man, a land of opportunity, right? Then you can, collaborate and work, team up for those things. So I think just don't let fear get in the way. And I wish I would have brought with me, there's a Shakespearean quote about how fear is a traitor because it keeps us from the good that we might often be able to achieve. And I think that fear permeates both of those examples I just gave them.
Yeah.
But just don't let it get in your way and just go for it. And I wouldn't be where I am today if I would have let fear gotten in the way of that.
Dr. Posada, I can't think of a better way to end this interview. I think that's powerful advice, and I know I appreciate it, and I know our listeners will appreciate it. So thank you again for your time. Thank you for your story. This concludes another episode, the Way to College podcast. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.